That's 2 o'clock.
Showtime. All right, we're live. Am I right? We're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. We are here showing you all about color matching. Last week, we talked about color exposure and getting, camera exposure. And this week, we're going to be talking about color matching.
Multiple cameras, all the different settings. We've been learning a lot about this recently, and we're excited to share with you guys everything that we've studied.
So today we are going to be talking, obviously, about camera color matching. We will also be looking at some presets in vMix that you can download from PTZOptics.com/color. We'll be looking at the camera pyramid, so obviously shutter speed, gain, and aperture, but going well beyond that into the advanced color settings as well. Don't miss our exposure presentation. Last week, we talked about how to get the perfect camera exposure. You should watch that first, then watch this series, because you got to get the perfect exposure before you can go ahead and do color matching. Next, we'll be showing you how to use a Vectorscope. Vectorscope is essentially an XY graph showing you the color representation from your live camera. We'll also be talking a little bit about lighting settings. PTZOptics cameras now support white balance based on lighting, and it's really detailed. We can go from somewhere in the neighborhood of 2400 Kelvin all the way up to 800 Kelvin in steps of 100. And we'll be looking at the vMix Vectorscope, and we've already created some presets that you can download. And we'll be looking at a Waveform monitor as well. That's how we can get our blacks and whites all perfect with the gray card. And you may have saw last week, we'll show you the white balance filter.
Now for my turn over here, guys. Keep in mind, voting is now open for the 2018 Streaming Awards. The awards are on June 1st. So head to streamingawards.com/vote to submit your entries for your favorite live streamers. Special shout out to Fernando, who is live streaming a Maroon 5 concert. How cool is that? Thank you so much for sharing your PTZOptics camera setup for that event. And finally, exciting news for those of you who have been requesting Android PTZ camera control applications, because one has now just been created. So I posted the link right above to where you can go ahead and access that. Keep in mind it is in beta. So if you want to be an initial beta tester, go check it out.
So we're going to show you all this and more coming up next. So welcome to Back to Basics. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, that's 11 a.m. Pacific. We've got a really great presentation that we're going to dive into right now. Obviously, our cameras have been color matched, and the exposure should look really good.
I noticed mine was a little off,
yeah,
and they're poking
off.
fun at us in the chat. I don't know what's going on there.
I think I changed the light a little bit, and it's a little too hot on that camera angle.
But we're not perfect, and lately we've been really trying to learn everything we can and make the most of our camera settings.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna.
We're gonna share with you guys.
This light is just a little too hot on you. Sorry. There we go.
That does feel better.
Okay, so let's get into our presentation. We got a great presentation for you guys, and we're gonna jump into it right now.
Just 1 second.
In just one moment.
I just want to get everyone make everyone good in the presentation. All right.
There we go. Okay, so we're talking about camera matching multiple cameras. So don't miss our last presentation. We have a link to it. If you download at PTZOptics.com/color, you can download our entire guide and this whole presentation. Plus, not only will you get the whole presentation, but you also get our presets for vMix, and Michael has made some for Adobe Premiere as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Really quickly wanted to mention some of the differences here, some of the things you need to know. One is a color lookup table. A lot of people call this a LUT, a lookup table. And essentially, you can think of it as R equals S plus L. R is the result, right? We want a well color balanced shot. That's our result that we're looking for. S is the source, and P is your LUT. So the LUT you can think of as the difference between your source and the desired outcome. Now a vectorscope, that is used to represent the color of your image, and that allows us to really look at the color coming from the camera based off of like a graphical mathematical equation, because sometimes you can look at a camera on a monitor and it's not calibrated properly. Maybe the accuracy of the monitor is not appropriate, so the vectorscope needs to be there and look really crisp. Now the waveform monitor works on the other side of the field of exposure. It helps us with our brightness and our contrast to make sure our blacks aren't getting crushed and make sure we're not clipping our image before the camera even gets to, color correction software. So some of the tools we're going to use today, I don't know where our color checker chart is currently, but it's in the hallway, but we have one and we've been using it. And we also have been using it in conjunction with Adobe Premiere, vMix, which does our color correction software. But if you have a TriCaster or a standalone Vectorscope or a Waveform monitor,
Connect Pro app?
You can, yeah. You can use the NewTek Connect Pro app. NewTek has a lot of great color correction tools. And we also use a gray card and a white balance filter and a Waveform monitor. So, a couple things to consider, Tess, about color correction. One of them is it's not a one-click process. You
want me to go back and forth on these? Okay. Let me pull it up on my computer because I can't read it from there.
It takes time, right? It's not a one-click process. There are people in movie sets that are literally colorists. That's their job.
That's their only job.
Yeah, it's their only job.
Especially on like cinematic movies, right?
Yeah.
That's their whole deal.
Now with live streaming and live broadcasting, it's very important to get these correct up front because there is no post-production. It's not like we can sit down and edit this. This is live streaming to the world.
Plan ahead for your shoots. Give ample time to color match your cameras and footage in post-production so you're not disappointed.
Yes, and keep in mind different angles have different lighting and different hairlines. So every camera is going to be a little different, but we're going to give you some really great tools and ideas and a whole workflow to get you to the end result.
Yeah, and make sure that you're using reliable monitors because all monitors are going to look slightly different. So maybe make that investment and spend that extra few bucks to get a good monitor.
Yeah. Now our workflow starts with the setup. So we obviously set up the cameras, then we configure them, and that is where our last presentation is all about configuring the white balance, the color checkers, getting that exposure perfect. Now where we're going to pick up with this presentation is applying the LUT, applying the light lookup table, the preset, the color correction, and then tweaking the settings for a perfect camera. Now, obviously the tools, the waveform monitors, the vectorscopes are really important, but you can use your own eye. It's just difficult.
Right. And moving on, last week we did do an entire show on exposure, so we probably don't need to go through all of these.
We just wanted to have it here for you guys, downloading the guide. Get your exposure done first.
Absolutely.
Now here is the color matching setup. So obviously we're starting with the best exposure. Then we're focusing on color, and that's the Vectorscope. And I watched a lot of tutorials on this, and everyone says always start with your hero shot, right? Meaning the most important camera shot that you have, the one that you're going to rely on the most, the one that you're going to open with. And for us, that is our main cam.
Yeah, the camera that you're seeing us through now.
So you start there. So you get the exposure perfect. We start with the hero camera. Then we adjust those settings. We consider color temperature. We talk about saturation, the hue, the gamma, the contrast, all of those things. We're all talking about color here, and we look at it on the Vectorscope, which is right here. And you can see that the Vectorscope actually shows basically an XY graph of where the colors are. And the more you saturate it, and that's looking kind of crazy, the more you saturate those colors, the farther out they will go, and they will reach those red, blue, cyan, yellow areas. So you can look at this to make sure your colors are right. Down here, this waveform monitor, what that's showing us is the blacks and the gray scale. So you can put a gray card there and make sure it's not clipping, at the tops here. You want to make sure it's not clipping.
Make sure those lines don't go all the way off of the graph. Is that what that means?
So we're looking at all of that. We're getting it perfect. And then if we have a color correction tool like Adobe Premiere, like vMix, like the TriCaster, other softwares that have this software, what we can do is, and Mike, this will probably be a good chance to play my B-roll on the vMix portion of this, is we can color correct the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. And by doing so, we can really get a good color correction. And I'm going to show this to you now. So here you can see I've got 3 different cameras, and I go into the color correction area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a preset that I already have. And you can download these. We've already got them for the 12x SDI, the 20x SDI. And you can see by clicking on and off there, I was able to see if I really liked what it had just done to my camera. And we went through, and Tess helped me with this, and we created presets for the 12x, the 20x, the box cam, and the 20x Z cam. And we went together and we tried to get these cameras as close to each other as possible. And then we saved those presets. So you can see there that preset really makes it look good. I'll do it again here. So turn it off and on, add the preset, looks a lot better. And then we can go ahead in there and add a different preset and just double check it, make sure that the shadows and the highlights are all looking good. So that's in vMix. If you have a different software like Wirecast, XSplit, you can also try it in Adobe Premiere, which we'll show you. And Adobe Premiere has a lot of people use this in post-production, not for live, but in post-production. This can give you an idea of how to apply a LUT here. So they call it, what do they call it, Michael? The lumetri?
Lumetric scale.
The lumetric scale here. And you can see there is a little clipping going on, so we probably could have adjusted the exposure a little bit there. But you can see here, again, everyone's talking the same language here. We've got saturation, we've got brightness, we have contrast, and we adjust these settings so that we can get that band in the middle nice and tight, and then we can download that LUT and then apply it to the whole system. So just like you may have learned for color grading in post-production, we've got like 3 or 4 different clips, maybe with different cameras. You know, a lot of people use drone cameras. They don't look the same as the digital SLRs. So this same process of figuring out what we like in our hero shot and then applying that to the other cameras and then tweaking them from there.
You can see them going back and forth between, and then
Michael's going back and forth between the different clips.
I think we're gonna save the LUT.
And then he saves the LUT right up there.
Really cool stuff.
So you can find really good information on that in online, and Michael is actually going to give you guys some of the LUTs that he has created to color match these cameras, and that should be good for that. So that's Adobe Premiere. So again, we're enhancing it. We're creating a LUT, a lookup table, a preset. It's actually considered color grading. You're taking your best exposed camera set to all the best settings possible, and then you are tweaking it even further in software, taking those settings and now applying them to the next camera, applying them to all the cameras. That's color grading, so they all have the same added color grade, and this is up to your preference. You know, maybe you want it to be warmer, maybe you want it to be more blue, maybe you want it to be more red. You grade it the way you want it to be.
If you want to set a mood.
Set the mood, apply it to all your cameras, and then know that you might need to tweak your cameras a little bit. And then you can toggle on and off the color grade to see if you like what has happened.
Yeah, these tools paired with the tools that are actually in your PTZOptics camera are really going to offer an optimization level that's just kind of really superior. If we're moving on, we have some in-camera color settings that we wanted to just make sure that you guys know about. There is an on-screen display menu on your camera accessible by the IP remote where you can adjust a lot of these settings.
Yep, you can use the IR remote by hitting the menu button, or you can go to the IP address of the camera, and in the bottom left you'll see a little drop down that says OSD. That allows you to operate the on-screen display menu. And the exposure mode, you know, you can tweak, but at this point you've probably already got that done. So on the next slide you'll see we'll go into the color area. Now in the color area, the white balance is incredibly important, obviously. When we're talking about color, it can actually affect all the colors. So we want to get the white balance set properly. One thing you can do is a 1-push white balance, or you can actually use our new color temperature settings, which are called VAR, variable color temperature, and it goes from 2500 Kelvin to 8000 Kelvin in steps of 100. So now you can match the
color temperature
of your lights.
Yeah, John's asking, Approximately, what is the kelvins of our cameras?
Most of our kelvins right now is in the neighborhood of 5,000. So it's not too cold or it's not too hot. It's somewhere in the middle. We have all bicolor lights, so we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000.
All right. We have quite a few questions here. Do you want to wait on them?
I do. I want to hold the questions till we get through the whole presentation, and then we'll answer all the questions in the post-show. I apologize, guys. This is a little deep, but we are going to save all the questions.
Okay.
So next slide. 3 other things that we should know about. One is hue. Hue is the main property of color. It's defined as the degree to which stimulus can be described as similar or different to other stimuli, described as red, green, blue, or yellow. So when you adjust the hue, you are changing all the colors in the camera. Gamma is a nonlinear operation used to encode and decode luminance in video. So gamma you can use to optimize the encoding, and it takes advantage of the way humans perceive light and color.
Interesting.
To understand that, we would need to understand that luminance is the photometric version of the intensity of the light traveling in a given direction.
That's crazy.
So all of those options are available to you in the camera to tweak when we're talking about color. So you can see here you can tweak the color. We like it around 6 usually.
The hue.
We have the white balance and the gamma settings, which we've found to tweak the color a little bit. We have our saturation in the camera and then also in post. And then the color grading, we talked about this pretty much in detail, but we got that hero shot, right? So that's where we're starting with our hero shot, and then we're applying what we found in the hero shot to our next 3 cameras. Or 4, however many cameras you have. We've talked about waveform monitors in the past. That is for exposure. And then the Vectorscope, which is for color. So take a look at that. It's all explained in our guide. Just some advice, one of the things when you're doing color correction and exposure is don't try to do it all inside the camera. Many times your highlights can actually be blown out before it gets to the video production software. So use your Vectorscope, use your waveform monitor. You might even want to turn down the range of the camera to get the most out of your sensor. So use these tools to make sure you're not crushing the blacks or overexposing your whites before you even get to the software. You can do a lot today in the post-production software. So that's our advice. Obviously, we're going to be talking about shutter speed, gain, and aperture. We did it in our last presentation. But these are the more advanced settings for color that you're probably going to end up using to really do your tweaking. The color balance is so important. This is our white balance. This is where we use our color checker. And I think that pretty much wraps up our presentation. Just remember, this whole presentation and our presets and LUTs are all available for free at PTZOptics.com/color.
I will be putting that in the chat.
So we've got a little lower third that'll show it right on the screen. And then now we'll take a few questions, but we are heading over to our post show, which is on Twitch. So that's where we're going to answer all the questions. But let's answer just a few tests while we're still here.
Okay, let me just try and go back here.
Thank you so
X-ray
much for
chart
watching.
could also be a candidate to calibrate as it is regarded as a standard for monitors also? I don't know what X-ray is.
That
X-ray
is
chart?
the color checker chart that we have.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's a different version
Apparently,
of it?
I
or-
think it can be used to calibrate monitors. Yes, it can.
Calibrating the monitors sounds like a good idea too.
Yeah, definitely calibrate your monitors.
Chris, so you can take a kit from Adobe and bring it into vMix? Is that what you're saying?
No. What we're saying is if you're doing post-production, you can use Adobe Premiere to do your color correction. If you're doing live streaming, live production, you want to use vMix.
It's good if you want something to match the view of the cameras in your live show. For instance, B-roll, if you want them to look similar when you transition over to recorded content, that might be a good way to.
Yeah, a lot of people are kind of in both
match.
worlds between recorded content and live content. So we wanted to show a lot of people are familiar with Adobe Premiere, and that shows how easy it is to use. The other thing that we've done, and this is something you guys can try, is record short clips of your cameras and then use those short clips to create your presets. Because you don't need to sit there with all of the cameras on and all the time. You can actually just record a bunch of clips, have somebody create presets for you even. Do you have a suggestion or link for color matching card to purchase?
The
yes,
one-
the X-Rite.
X-Rite.
X-Rite color checker is definitely the best one. So that's our show. We're going to go switch to Twitch, answer any more questions, and then we have a trivia to see who was paying attention the most, and we're going to have to see who knows the most about color correction. It's going to be a very technical post show. So we'll see you guys soon.
That means extra, extra.